presentation, we have Mrs. Bowers with the 5-year forecast.
Good evening. I just want to give you an update tonight. Just a quick reminder here, we are required, Ohio Revised Code, to file a 5-year forecast twice a year. That happens in November. It also is updated in May. There are 3 reasons that this is done. The very first reason is to engage. It's opportunity for administration to work with the board as well as our community members and stakeholders for long-range planning so that we can see what the needs are for the district. As well, it serves to assist us with signing a 412 certificate. Basically what this is, you cannot enter into contracts that you cannot financially support. And then finally is to provide a method for the Ohio Department of Education to identify school districts that might be entering into fiscal watch. Real quick, just want to let you know this is based on information as we have it today. I have spent so many hours the last few weeks doing this, and I'm constantly updating it every day. I got to a point to where I said, okay, we got to stop with this, but things happen. I mean, we have repairs that need made, staff members that leave and have to be replaced, and purchases that have to be made. So this is based on information. I did this one yesterday, so as it was yesterday, this is what we're showing today. So I'll let you see this here first. This is where we started the fiscal year. We entered in with a cash balance of $10,454,000. By June 30th, we're expected to end with a cash balance of just a little bit better than $13 million. A lot of you may recall we had significant increase with property tax revenue that contributes to this. We also had the Fair School Funding Plan that had their inputs updated to 22. So we had increased revenue from that. We also had the settling of that Rocky pipeline. So again, we've had some help with our revenue in this fiscal year. For this fiscal year, I'm projecting that we will come out about $2.7 million more in revenue than what we will have in expenditures. That is just for FY25. I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is, I just want you to take a look at where our revenue comes from. A little bit better than half of our funding comes from the state. The other half is split, 40% basically from local taxpayers, and then that other little piece of the pie, interest on earnings, refunds from prior year expenditures, and things like that. So if it's not falling either in state revenue or property tax, it goes into this other little piece of the pie.
Patty, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
On the slide before, you said you project a little over 13 million on the ending cash balance
For FY25.
Now, how many days out does that get us? Because what do they recommend for
60, and I have that out at the end of this presentation.
I had to. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So if we take a look here, you can see $18 million roughly projected for local taxes, and then projected state funding a little better than $23 million. All other revenue is about $3.6 million.
What did you say that includes?
I'm sorry.
What did you say that includes?
The other revenue. So pay to participate fees go in there. The RID and TIP revenue that we get go in there. If it's not state funding or property tax, it's going into that little piece of the pie. Donations. Donations would go into there. You may remember when I come on board, the district was significantly behind on Medicaid filing, so we caught that up. We are finally caught up. We just got 22 back last year for $130,000. That fits in that little piece of the pie. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm gonna move on now to FY '25 projected expenditures. It's no secret that personnel is the biggest expense that the district has. This year I'm projecting we'll land about $23.7 million for salaries, benefits at $10.7 million. The next big part of our budget here then is the purchase service coming in at $5.4 million. And then finally, all other expenditures at 2.2. So the other expenditures, you think supplies, things we use in the classroom, custodial maintenance supplies, the purchase services, we're gonna talk more about that later as well. That has increased, it will continue to increase. And then advances and transfers. As you know, we don't close out our funds negative, so we advance monies out and then we move them back in. So all of that is reflected there in that bottom number. But again, the biggest expenditure we have comes in 82% overall for our personnel. Purchase services is the next big one.
And our personnel cost at 82%, is that state average or about?
That is just what we spend. So of all of the money that we spend here at Edgewood, 82% of that money is for personnel.
But is that
Usually
like,
it's 80 to
what
85%.
guidance that
Oh,
was?
yes, across the state, yeah, it runs about 80 to 85%. Okay, so we'll take a look at our demographics here. Right now, our daily cost per pupil is $73. I can tell you back in last year, FY '24, it was $70. So our daily cost per pupil has only gone up $3. You think with the inflation we've come through, not too bad. You can see the resident property owners portion is 24%, and then the state and federal business taxes comes in at 76%. There's not a lot of change here in this slide. So in FY '24, our property taxes was 23%, so that's gone up 1%. State and federal has gone down by 1%. Also for FY '25, Edgewood City School District's calculated base cost is just barely over $27 million. The state share of this comes in at $13 million, or $4,287 per pupil. We'll move on to district educated enrollment. Again, we share this quite often here. It's something that we have to watch because this does impact our state funding. My software shows, actually I was talking to Mr. Messerschmidt about this today, shows us losing 40 kids every year throughout this 5-year forecast. Again, we're hoping that that's not the case, but that is what is being projected. Our October #1 payment was significantly higher. ODE, when they adjusted, and they did this on the October #2 payment, so we get 2 payments a month from the state. So October #1, and we got October #2. They actually updated our enrollment with the October #2 payment, and as a result, we lost more than $800,000. Again, our enrollment went down significantly, and that was a big impact for that $800,000 loss. You've heard me say as well, this is not an Edgewood thing. Enrollment is declining across the state. Also sat through something with Katie Johnson, who's the executive director at OASBO. The birth rate in the state of Ohio is dropping significantly too. So just something else to keep in mind there. Not an Edgewood thing, it's just going on across the state. We will move on now to forecast revenues. Again, there you can see that 24 is actual, so our revenues came in just a little better than 42 million. In 25, again, we've had some help here with property tax and the Fair School Funding Plan, so we anticipate our revenue to be about 44 million this year. In 26, we do decrease again. Now, part of this, we're going to lose about 1.5 million for the substitute that is expiring, and then you can see out in the future, in the further years, that's more like $3 million out in those years. So again, we've got a little help this year, and that's why we're going to have that $2.7 million surplus this year, but it's quickly depleting. Gonna flip on now to forecasted expenditures.
I have a question, Patty, going back to this last slide, the projected revenues. So it's 44 million this year, then it drops to 42, and then it drops to 40, then it bumps back up to 41. What's the driver of it bumping back? Because it kind of seems like it declines, but there's one in 2028, it's more than 2027. What bumps that up?
There's a lot of reasons for this. One of the main, in 23, we went through a triennial update. Every 3 years, we go through an appraisal. So you have a triennial, and then in 3 years, you have an update. We anticipate that property tax will go up again in that third year. Also, I believe we're at 66% now with the phase-in from the Fair School Funding Plan. So we know we anticipate that we're gonna get a little bit more once they increase their inputs. Again, enrollment is huge, so depending on what happens with that enrollment, our state money could be decreased. But property tax is definitely the driving factor with the increased revenue.
Gotcha. Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome. So we'll look here at these expenditures. Again, there's 24 is out there, and that's actual at 39 million. 42.2 million is anticipated here for the fiscal year 25. Again, you gotta think we've had a lot of inflation. We also had our benefits that increased 8% this year. Everything's going up, and inflation is huge. I have gone through these numbers multiple times. I feel really good about these numbers. In 26, you can see it continues to grow. The only thing I do want to point out to you here, I have added in here a 3% increase when we look at salaries. We know that we are significant, well, not every district, but we're low around here, so that is built in. There's nothing else built in other than the $500,000 that we agreed that we're going to do for curriculum. So I've gone back and pulled out from this the buses, and we'll hear more about that tonight. We are planning to use PI funds for that. The roof repairs, the pavement repairs, we have all of that slated to be used out of that PI. So these numbers are, in my opinion, very good numbers here. We can move on to this over under. We always like to go back to this 6.010 line. And again, that is how much that our revenue will exceed the expenditures or exceed the expenditures that you're gonna see here in 26. Take a look there at 7.010, our cash balance. Like I told you, we went into this year with $10 million. You can see by the end of this forecast in 7.010, we're $4.5 million in the red. Now that does not include on that line the levy. If you look on down, if that substitute were to renew, you can see that we're extended out just a little bit further, but you're gonna see when we get further into this presentation here that there's still gonna be a shortfall. So I'm gonna move on to this next slide here, the forecast summary. And again, that just shows you what happened there in the blue. That's our revenues. The gold color is our expenditures. And then that line is our cash balance. So you can see it's just going down. I'm gonna go one more slide ahead. I actually like this slide here the best. So you take a look at that blue line, that's our total revenue. That is even with the renewals. And this is why I like this, because if you look at that blue line, even with the renewal, you're gonna see there that our expenditures just outpace what we're anticipating that we're gonna receive. So, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, a lot of things we need to think about, but from 25 to 29, those expenses increased by 4.85%.
So even with a renewal, we're only good till 2026?
Yeah, well, we'll have cash. We can go, let me go back a slide here. We will have a cash balance. So you often hear me say that we need to be able to certify 3 years because we have a little bit of a cash cushion right now. That's gonna take us out. We can certify those 3 years. We are hoping that we can get something passed in 25, and it's probably gonna take us out another year. It's not gonna take us out through 29.
We'd have to ask for new money to get us through 29.
But then that would be zero cash on hand at that point, if we did pass one in 29.
We would have to go back out probably in 2027, once the two bonds fall off, and ask for a replacement of those, new money, but,
New money.
but replace of the bond.
So going back to that, forecast over and under, you can see that 12.010 fund balance, June 30th for our certificate. You heard me say 26, 27, and 28. We would be able to certify those years. It's that last year there that we're still negative $5 million.
What's the deficit in 26?
If you look at 6.010, deficit spending 2.6 million. We will exceed the revenue by about $2.6 million in 26, based on what we are spending now. And like I said, the only thing built out there is that curriculum adoption budget at about $500,000. And again, it's based on what we know today. This doesn't include, like, we think, Mr. Fussnecker was telling me the other day, for example, some curriculum that we had just ordered for $50,000 is coming in now at $80,000. I mean, I'm hoping that inflation goes back down somewhat, but there's not a lot of that built in here. So we have that curriculum money built in, that 3% that we're hoping that we can get from staff. And again, we just have to be able to certify out 3 years. We can go back and change that. We can adjust the curriculum. We can take out increases. It's up to the board to tell us how to do that, but I just want to let you know, going in, there's not a lot here. There's really not. So I'm going to move back, and here's that calendar days cash on hand, Mr. Pressler, that you was asking about. So yeah, the GFOA says.
Slide numbers.
And again, so we've got that 60 days cash on hand. When you think of cash on hand and they tell you to stay at your 60 days, that's because it would take you 60 days to figure out what you're gonna do. And we know there are two options. You either increase your revenue or you decrease your expenditures. So we've got some work ahead of us. I'm going to move on here to this fund balance again, and just, you can take a look here. The fund balance for that certificate of appropriations, again, will be able, because we had a cash surplus, we will be able to certify 25, 26, 27, and it's out there in 28. Without that renewal, we will not be able to certify 28. But if we could get that substitute passed next year, it would take care of 28. But we still, you can see that last line there out there in 29, deficit $5 million.
So it's basically buying us a year.
It's buying us a year.